feed off collapse. They whisper at your failures and scream at others' downfalls. They clap louder when someone falls than when someone rises. Because it's easier to spectate than to build. Easier to point fingers than to look in the mirror. Easier to throw stones than to carry your own weight. But you were never made for that kind of weakness. You weren't made to gossip in the shadows or gloat over the ruins of others. You were made to build, to carry, to stand alone if needed, to become the type of person who doesn't wait for the world to fix itself, but becomes the one who leads it back from the edge. This is the era of collapse, and it's no accident. We live in a world starving for heroes, but obsessed with drama, addicted to comfort, but drowning in depression, screaming for justice, but allergic to responsibility. Everywhere you look, you'll find people with excuses in one hand and a magnifying glass in the other, desperate to magnify your flaws so they can avoid their own reflection. They want scapegoats, not standards, distractions, not discipline. They want someone to blame, someone to burn. Because facing themselves would destroy them, but not you. You face the fire. You become the fire. Self-reliance is not a trend. It's a survival trait. When the world turns to noise and blame, you turn inward. You build in silence. You sharpen your edges. You hold yourself accountable because no one is coming to save you. And the truth is brutal. We are in a game, not one built on fairness, but survival. A game that punishes the lazy, rewards the wolves, and eats the unprepared alive. The only way to win is to evolve, to master the mind, to own your actions, to train like every day is war, because it is. Lead by example, or get lost in the crowd. Don't preach what you haven't lived. Don't demand change from others when your house is still on fire. The most powerful lesson you can ever teach another soul isn't in words. It's in how you live, in how you rise after the storm, in how you carry yourself when no one's watching, in how you push forward without applause, without validation, without an ounce of help. You don't need to scream to be heard. When your life is your message, it echoes louder than any speech ever could. The world doesn't need more critics. It needs warriors. It needs people willing to take ownership in a time when ownership is rare. People who don't seek power over others, but power over themselves. People who stop asking for permission and start becoming the blueprint. Heroes don't fall from the sky. They rise from the ashes of their former selves. They're forged in solitude, built in pain, and revealed when the stakes are highest. Be that hero, not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the one who walks the path first, the one who bleeds first, the one who earns their scars and wears them like armor. Now that you understand the truth, that the world is starving for warriors, not watchers, that accountability is the only way forward, and that real change doesn't come from judging others, but mastering yourself. The question becomes, how? How do you rise above the noise? How do you break the chains of dependency, illusion, and weakness, and become the one who leads by example? It starts with self-reliance, not the surface-level kind, but the kind forged in solitude, sharpened by honesty, and built through ruthless discipline. Here are 5 warrior steps to master self-reliance and to view yourself with such clarity that every strength becomes a weapon and every weakness becomes a target. Let's begin. Step 1. Withdraw from the noise. Enter the observation tower. The warrior's first act is not violence. It is silence. Before a blade is drawn, before any battle is fought, a warrior withdraws. Not out of fear, but because he knows that real strength comes from clarity. And clarity does not grow in the chaos of the crowd. In today's world, we are bombarded every second. Opinions, criticisms, validation seeking, digital performance, status comparison. You are constantly being pulled away from yourself. Every scroll, every post, every conversation is another thread tightening around your identity until you can no longer distinguish what you believe from what the world has convinced you to believe. So you must do something radical in this era of noise. You must retreat, not as an escape, but as a strategy, like a general pulling back to the war room before the next assault, like a samurai entering meditation before a duel. You enter the observation tower. In this sacred place, you silence the world so you can hear yourself. No voices, no comparisons, no projections from others trying to live through you or break you down. Just you, and the raw truth of what you become. This is the only place you'll ever find authentic power. And here's the secret. You can't see yourself clearly when you're standing too close to the mirror. From the tower, you get distance. You step outside your own identity, your patterns, your reactions, your masks, and observe them like a tactician studies the enemy. Ask yourself, who am I pretending to be just to fit in? What lies am I still telling myself to feel safe? What pain am I hiding from by blaming others? These are not weak questions. They are weapons of awakening. The world will mock your solitude because they are terrified of their own. They'll tell you isolation is dangerous. They'll tell you quiet is weakness. Because if you wake up in that silence, they'll have to face the parts of themselves they've buried. But you're different. You came here to see clearly, to understand who you really are beneath the noise. You start to see the way you flinch from certain challenges. You start to notice the excuses you've rehearsed so well they become part of your personality. You start to see where you've been reacting instead of creating, surviving instead of building. This is the gift of the observation tower. Not comfort, confrontation, not validation, vision. Because from up there, you finally see the game you've been playing without realizing it. The game of conformity, distraction, avoidance, and external approval. And more importantly, you start to see how to win it. So stay in that tower. Let the silence burn away your false identity. Let the truth strike like lightning. And when you descend back into the world, you won't be the same. You'll walk with precision. You'll act from intention. And you'll speak only when your words are aligned with your mission, not with your ego. Self-reliance begins here, by breaking away from the noise and reclaiming your inner command center. No one else will do this for you. No one else can. Because this world isn't falling apart because of too little noise. It's collapsing because there are too few people willing to withdraw, reflect, and rebuild from within. Be that person. Climb the tower and see yourself clearly, ruthlessly, powerfully, for the first time. Step 2. Dissect the machine. Know your patterns. You are a system, a machine, a network of thoughts, emotions, routines, fears, and desires. And until you understand that machine, you will always be a slave to its programming. Step 2 is the brutal art of dissection. The warrior does not rely on chance or superstition. He studies himself like an engineer studies a complex weapon. Because he knows, if I don't understand how I work, I cannot control where I go. Most people, they move on autopilot. Their days are nothing but reactions, triggered by emotion, influenced by the past, seduced by distraction, and justified by convenience. They live the same loops, call it life, and wonder why nothing ever changes. But you're here to change the trajectory. And to do that, you must become a cold observer of your own operating system. Start with the daily rituals, not the big dramatic events, but the small things, the subtle habits that quietly determine 90% of your life. Ask yourself, what's the first thing I do when I wake up? What do I turn to when I'm overwhelmed? What do I avoid, even though I know it's holding me back? This is where the true battles are fought. It's not about conquering mountains. It's about conquering your morning, your impulses, your cravings, your tendencies. For example, do you run to your phone before you run to your mission? Do you fuel your mind with garbage before you fuel it with purpose? Do you wait until crisis strikes to take action, or do you strike first? Your routines are not random. They are the framework of your destiny. And then, go deeper. Begin dissecting your emotional reflexes. When you're criticized, do you shrink or sharpen? When plans fall apart, do you spiral or adapt? When you're alone, do you reflect or escape? Understand this. Your external life is just a mirror of your internal programming. If you're always broke, always exhausted, always anxious, there's a system inside you keeping it that way. And most people never stop to question it. They live inside the machine, but never open it up. They react, panic, blame others, blame fate, never realizing the enemy lives within. But you're not here to be most people. You're here to become dangerously aware. So map your mind like a battlefield. Study your triggers like an enemy spy. Track your weak spots like a general planning for war. You must develop a ruthless sense of inner diagnosis. Why? Because every weakness you don't identify becomes a hole in your armor. And this world has no mercy for those who walk into battle unprepared. Every unconscious habit is a seed, and seeds grow. They grow into addiction, failure, regret, and loss, or if chosen wisely, into power, discipline, freedom, and wealth. The choice is always yours, but only if you see the roots clearly. There's another layer, your belief systems. These are the invisible commands running in the background, shaping everything you say and do. I'm not smart enough. I can't be consistent. That's just the way I am. Lies. These beliefs didn't come from truth. They came from trauma, from repetition, from society, from the whispers of people who quit on themselves and wanted you to join them. But if you don't interrogate those beliefs, you'll carry them to your grave, and you'll never even know they weren't yours to begin with. So tear it apart, line by line, system by system, habit by habit, not to destroy yourself, but to reprogram yourself. Because once you understand your machine, you can rebuild it into anything you want. This is how warriors are made, not in a flash of glory, but in quiet moments of internal war. So ask yourself today, am I still running the same software I inherited from fear, failure, and false belief? And if the answer is yes, then it's time to dissect the machine. Because until you know how it works, you'll always be at the mercy of its glitches. But when you understand it, when you master it, you no longer react. You decide. And that, right there, is where self-reliance truly begins. Step 3. Wage war on dependency. Dependency is the silent disease of the modern mind. It wears many faces: convenience, comfort, validation, security. But the result is always the same: weakness. Because every time you depend on something outside yourself to move, to feel worthy, to feel safe, you surrender your power. You give it away, piece by piece, until one day you wake up in chains you forged yourself. But a warrior lives by a different law. If it can be taken from me, I will not depend on it. He sees dependency for what it is: not love, not loyalty, not luxury, but leverage. The world owns you if it feeds you. If you need its praise to feel confident, it owns your self-worth. If you need its approval to act, it owns your voice. If you need a system to survive, it owns your future. So the warrior wages war on every chain. Not with hatred, not with pride, but with ruthless clarity. Start with emotional dependency. Do you need someone to tell you you're enough before you move? Do you stay broken just so others will stay close? Do you collapse when people pull away because your identity is still hooked to their attention? This is not love. It's not connection. It's a drug. And like all drugs, it creates need, then withdrawal, then collapse. A warrior cuts that cord. He says, I will love from strength, not need. I will connect without losing myself. I will walk alone if I must, but never depend on someone to carry me. Then target your behavioral dependencies. Do you depend on caffeine to feel human? Do you depend on dopamine hits, social media, junk food, pornography to numb your pain? Do you need chaos to feel alive and drama to feel important? These are not just bad habits. They are anchors. They weigh down your potential. They kill momentum. And worst of all, they reprogram your brain to require a crutch every time life gets difficult. But life is difficult. That's the point. And if you want to rise above it, you must train your nervous system to function in discomfort. The modern world teaches comfort as the goal. But warriors know, comfort is a cage. Discomfort is the forge. Now let's talk about systemic dependency. If your finances depend on one paycheck, you're a hostage. If your happiness depends on weekends or vacations, you're a prisoner. If your confidence depends on trends, likes, and followers, you've been hacked. This system does not want you free. It wants you comfortable enough to not revolt and dependent enough to never leave. So what does a warrior do? He builds his own systems, multiple streams of income, skills that no algorithm can take away, habits that produce peace, not chaos, a body and mind so resilient they can't be bought, broken, or bribed. The goal is sovereignty, not arrogance, not isolation, but inner independence, where you can walk through fire without begging someone else to carry the hose. And here's the paradox. When you need less, you can give more. When you stop clinging, you start creating. When you stop depending on others to save you, you become the one who saves others. Because dependence creates weakness, but self-reliance creates power. And power, when rooted in honor, becomes service. You want to teach people to be strong? Stop preaching. Live unchained. Let them see what it looks like to move without fear, to act without approval, to build without begging. This is the war you must wage, not against others, but against the part of you that still believes you need them. And every time you cut a cord, every time you stand alone, every time you say, I've got me, you take back territory, not just in your life, but in your soul. And in a world addicted to escape and excuse, You will become what few ever dare to be. Free. Fully. Finally. Unapologetically. A self-reliant warrior. Unshakable. Unbought. Unstoppable. Step 4. Mirror of the enemy. View yourself without bias. Most people never truly see themselves. They see a version of themselves, filtered, softened, edited by emotion and ego. They cling to affirmations, to comfort phrases like, "I'm doing my best," or "That's just how I am," as if these are shields strong enough to survive the storm that's coming. But a warrior breaks the mirror, because he doesn't want comfort. He wants truth. And truth does not flatter. It cuts. It doesn't cradle your pride. It exposes it. It doesn't confirm your excuses. It erases them. This step is about looking at yourself not as you wish to be seen, but as your greatest enemy would see you. Cold, unbiased, merciless. Because that's the only way to see where you're leaking power. Here's how it works. Imagine someone wanted to destroy you. Not with guns or swords, but with strategy. They study you. They watch how you move. They notice your inconsistencies, your insecurities, your fears, your need to be liked, your avoidance of hard conversations, your soft spots, your patterns. What would they find? What would they exploit? That you're inconsistent with your habits unless someone's watching. That your emotions hijack your logic under pressure. That you fold when the plan falls apart. That you crave external validation more than you crave discipline. These are not just weaknesses. They are open doors to your downfall. And every single one of them remains wide open until you close them yourself. But you can't close them if you're too busy pretending they're not there. So remove the bias. Step outside yourself. Drop the story. Look at your life like a tactician, not a victim. Ask, if I were my enemy, how would I beat me? Where do I hesitate? Where do I self-sabotage under pressure? What lies do I keep telling myself to stay safe from growth? And then, turn those weaknesses into targets. Because every flaw you identify is an opportunity to fortify your armor. But only if you stop protecting your ego and start protecting your mission. Here's the painful truth. You can't evolve if you're still lying to yourself. You can't become unstoppable while still defending your limits. You must attack your own narrative like it's your greatest threat. Because it is. Your narrative tells you you're already doing enough. That failure wasn't your fault. You deserve a break. But the mirror of the enemy doesn't care how you feel. It only reflects what is. And sometimes, what is ugly, inconsistent, undisciplined, average, good. Because now you know where to go to war. This isn't about shame. It's about strategy. You're not tearing yourself down. You're building the version of you who doesn't break when the world does. You're building the version who sees clearly, acts decisively, and doesn't wait to be rescued. So the next time you look in the mirror, don't look for comfort. Don't look for someone to coddle. Look for the cracks, and then fix them. Ruthlessly, systematically, obsessively. Because if you won't be honest about your flaws, the world will be. And it won't be gentle. Final reminder, the world is not fair. It doesn't reward who you think you are. It rewards who you become when no one's watching. So become someone that no enemy could defeat, because you already found your own weakness and crushed it. That is the way of the warrior. Brutal honesty, cold clarity, zero illusions, no ego, no excuses, just evolution. Step 5. Forge in fire. train relentlessly, and track the war map. You've seen the truth. You've dissected your weaknesses. You've cut the cords of dependency and confronted the raw, unfiltered version of yourself. Now comes the part that separates the watchers from the warriors. The forge. The relentless, unglamorous, day in, day out execution of discipline. Because all the awareness in the world means nothing without transformation. Knowing the problem is only step one. Becoming the solution is where the fire begins. This step isn't about motivation. It's about ritual. The world wants you to be reactionary, to chase comfort, to wait for the perfect moment, to keep preparing, reading, planning, but never doing. But warriors aren't built in comfort. They're built in fire. And that fire is repetition. You wake up and you train. Not when it's convenient, not when you're in the mood, but because it's who you are now. Discipline is not a feeling. It's a decision you make so often it becomes your identity. And once that identity is forged, it becomes your armor. You must track your war map. Think like a general. Every day is a battle. Every decision, a tactical move. Every action, a step deeper into the territory of the person you were destined to become. Here's how. Log your flaws, not to shame yourself, but to chart your growth. I avoid conflict becomes, had the difficult conversation today. I procrastinate workouts becomes trained legs before the sun rose. Mark your routines. Not just when you win, but also when you slip. Every missed task is a message. Every executed habit is a strike against the old version of you. Study your patterns like a battlefield. When do you lose focus? When do your emotions hijack your goals? Where does the enemy, your former self, still have strongholds? This is not some soft self-help checklist. This is your campaign for inner domination. Because this isn't just about training the body. It's about retraining the mind to obey and forcing the soul to remember why you were born in the first place. Now hear this clearly. You don't rise by accident. You don't stumble into greatness. You build it brick by brick in the dark, while others sleep, while others scroll, while others wait. Every drop of sweat, every early morning, every rejected excuse is a declaration to the universe. I will not be average. I will not be soft. I will not die with my potential unclaimed. Let others laugh at your routines. Let them mock your obsession. Let them dismiss your structure. But remember, you're not building for applause. You're building for war. The moment will come when the pressure rises, when the chaos hits, when the crisis erupts, and they'll be looking for someone who didn't fold, someone who trained when it wasn't fun, someone who can hold the line. That's you. And when you feel the urge to quit, because you will, when the pain creeps in, when the vision blurs, when the motivation dies, you don't negotiate, you execute. You return to the war map. You remind yourself why you started. You drag your body forward if your mind is weak. You shut the inner coward down with action. You become the proof that resilience is not mythical. It's earned. In the end, it's not the strongest who survive. It's the most trained, the most conditioned, the most obsessed with mastery. So don't just walk the path. Conquer it. Track the map. Train the body. Reprogram the mind. Rebuild the soul. You don't rise from ashes by accident. You rise because you burned away everything soft and became forged in fire. This is the warrior's way. Not once, not sometimes, but every damn day. You've seen what the world has become. A stage of spectators, a circus of critics, A society addicted to watching others fall instead of building themselves up. But you were never meant to blend into that noise. You were meant to rise above it, to become the example, to lead, not by words, but by embodied truth. And it all begins with accountability. The moment you stop feeding off of others' downfall, the moment you stop pointing fingers and start holding the mirror, that's the moment your power returns. Because in a game stacked against weakness, the only way to win is to master yourself. You learned the path. In step 1, you withdrew from the noise and climbed the observation tower. You chose clarity over comfort. In step 2, you dissected the machine. You broke yourself down to understand every pattern, trigger, and routine that shapes your life. In step 3, you declared war on dependency. You cut every cord tying your worth, emotions, and stability to the outside world. In step 4, you looked in the mirror with the eyes of your enemy, unfiltered, cold, honest. You saw yourself not as you wish to be, but as you truly are. And in step 5, you entered the forge. You began training relentlessly, tracking your every move like a general charting a war map, transforming self-awareness into self-mastery. This isn't a theory. This is a code, a path for those who are done living passively, a method for those ready to become the ones others look to when the world begins to fall apart. Because when you take responsibility, when you sharpen your edge, when you choose discipline over distraction and self-reliance over blame, you become dangerous. You become unshakable. You become the hero the world never saw coming. So choose the path of the warrior, the path of the few, and lead not with noise, but with example. The world doesn't need another critic. It needs you, sharpened, ready, relentless, unstoppable.